My name is Marcus, and I never believed in signs from beyond until the day I found the code hidden in my wedding photo. It was a crisp October morning in Portland, Oregon, 6 months after my wife Elena's sudden passing from a heart attack. The autumn leaves were dancing outside my kitchen window, painting the world in shades of amber and gold that reminded me painfully of her eyes. I was finally ready to pack away some of Elena's belongings, a task I'd been avoiding since the funeral. The grief counselor said it was progress, but it felt like betrayal. How do you box up a life? How do you decide what memories deserve to stay and which ones get stored in the garage? The wedding photo sat on our mantelpiece, the same spot it had occupied for 8 beautiful years. Elena looked radiant in her ivory dress, her delicate hand resting on my chest as we stood beneath the cherry blossoms in Washington Park. I remembered that day perfectly, the way the spring breeze had made her laugh as it played with her hair, how she had whispered, "I love you," just before the photographer captured this moment, the joyful tears streaming down her father's face as we exchanged vows. As I lifted the frame to dust beneath it, something felt different. The backing seemed loose, shifting slightly in my hands. My heart skipped. Elena was meticulous about everything, especially our most precious possessions. She would never have let our wedding photo remain in a damaged frame. Curiosity overcoming my reluctance to disturb anything of hers, I carefully removed the back panel. Behind our formal portrait, pressed against the glass, was a small piece of paper I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, revealing Elena's delicate handwriting, numbers and symbols that made no immediate sense. 14, 09, 26, 33, 18, 05, 01, 20. Below the sequence, she had written in her characteristic purple pen, "For when you need to remember what matters most, the place where we promised forever." I stared at the cryptic message, my mind racing. Elena had always been playful with puzzles and riddles. It was one of the things that had drawn me to her during our college years. She'd leave coded notes in my textbooks, create treasure hunts for our anniversaries, and challenge me with brain teasers over our morning coffee. But this felt different, urgent, important. The rain began pattering against the windows, and I found myself clutching the note to my chest, feeling closer to Elena than I had in months. She had left this for me deliberately, hidden it where she knew I would eventually find it. But when had she done this? And why? I spent the next hour analyzing the numbers from every angle I could think of. They weren't dates. The sequence didn't match any significant moments in our relationship. They weren't coordinates. I checked that immediately. Phone numbers, social security digits, addresses we'd lived at. Nothing clicked. The phrase, "the place where we promised forever," kept echoing in my mind. Our wedding venue came to mind first, but we'd gotten married in the park, not somewhere with safes or locks. Then I remembered something Elena used to say during our late-night conversations about the future. "Home is where we promise forever, every single day." Our house. The code had something to do with our house. I walked through each room methodically, looking for anything that might require an 8-digit combination. The smart home system? No, that used a 4-digit code I'd set myself. Elena's jewelry box. That had a key, not a combination lock. I checked closets, drawers, even the old filing cabinet in the basement. Then I remembered the safe. We'd installed it 3 years ago, after a series of break-ins in our neighborhood had made us nervous about keeping important documents and Elena's grandmother's jewelry unsecured. Elena had insisted on setting the combination herself, claiming she wanted to use numbers that were meaningful to our story. At the time, I'd been busy with a work project and had told her to choose whatever she wanted, trusting that she'd share it with me when needed. But she never had. Whenever we needed something from the safe, Elena would retrieve it herself. I'd never thought much about it. She was organized with that sort of thing, and I had enough passwords and codes to remember already. The safe was hidden behind a false panel in our bedroom closet, installed by professionals who'd assured us it was fire-resistant and nearly impossible for burglars to detect. As I knelt before the digital keypad, my heart hammered against my ribs. I entered the sequence slowly. 14092633180502120. Nothing. The red light blinked mockingly. Frustrated, I tried removing the zeros, thinking maybe Elena had added them for formatting. 1492633185112. Still nothing. I sat back on my heels, studying the note again. Elena was clever. There had to be another layer to this puzzle. The way she'd hyphenated the numbers suggested they were meant to be separate, not one long sequence. What if each number represented something else? Letters, of course. I grabbed a pen and paper, numbering the alphabet, A1, B2, C3, and so on. The sequence, 1409 to 26, 33, 1805, 0120, would translate to... Wait, there was no 26th letter, and 33 was way beyond Z. That couldn't be right. Maybe it was something simpler. Phone keypad letters? No, that didn't work either. I was about to give up for the night when another memory surfaced. Elena had majored in literature, and she'd once shown me a cipher she'd learned in a cryptography elective. Something about shifting letter values. What if the numbers weren't direct letter substitutions, but coordinates on a standard phone keypad? On old phones, letters were grouped with numbers. ABC2, DEF3, and so on. But as I worked through this theory, I realized I was overcomplicating things. Elena knew me well enough to know I'd struggle with elaborate codes. She would have made it challenging, but not impossible. Then it hit me. What if I was supposed to treat this like a date format? Elena was European by birth. She'd moved to the States for college, and she sometimes still wrote dates in the European format. 1409 could be September 14th, our first date. 2633 could be... I paused, trying to remember what was significant about those numbers. Elena's old apartment number had been 2633 on Elm Street, where we'd spent countless evenings during our courtship. 1805 might be May 18th, the day we got engaged, 3 years after that first coffee date that had stretched into dinner, and then a midnight walk through downtown Portland. Row 120 could be January 20th. Or, wait, what if it wasn't dates at all? I looked at the wedding photo again, studying every detail. Elena's dress size had been 14. Our wedding had been in September, the 9th month. We'd been married on the 26th. We'd celebrated at the Heathman Hotel, a number I couldn't immediately connect. But there had been 33 guests at our intimate ceremony. My pulse quickened. I was onto something. 18 could represent Elena's age when we met. No, she'd been 19. Unless 18 had been the table number at the restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary dinner. Elena had specifically requested that table because she said it had the best view of the city lights. 05 might represent May, when we'd bought this house. A01 could be January, when Elena had gotten the promotion that allowed us to afford the mortgage. And 20, that was this year, 2020, though it felt strange to think of it as significant since she'd passed away. This was getting me nowhere. I needed to think like Elena, not like myself. I closed my eyes and tried to remember how her mind worked. She was sentimental but practical, romantic but not overly complicated. If she'd left me a code, it would be something meaningful to both of us, but not so obscure that I'd never figure it out. The phrase came back to me, for when you need to remember what matters most. What mattered most to Elena? Our relationship, certainly, our home, our memories, our plans for the future that had been cut so short. Wait, Elena had always said that what mattered most couldn't be bought or sold. It was the moments we shared, the love we built, the promises we kept. Promises. The place where we promised forever. I'd been thinking too literally. Yes, we'd gotten married in the park, but Elena had always said that our real promises weren't made just on our wedding day. They were made every day in small ways, through our actions and choices. But there was one place where we'd made a very specific promise, early in our relationship. A promise that had become a running joke between us, and then a cherished tradition. The Portland Japanese garden. On our third date, we'd wandered through the peaceful paths, and Elena had stopped at the small wooden bridge over the koi pond. She'd turned to me with that mischievous smile I'd grown to love and said, "If we're still together in a year, let's come back here and make it official." I'd laughed and agreed, thinking it was just playful banter. But exactly 1 year later, Elena had surprised me by suggesting we visit the garden again. At that same bridge, she'd pulled out a small wrapped box, not an engagement ring, but a simple silver band with an inscription inside, "Promise me forever, one day at a time." We'd returned to that bridge every year on our dating anniversary, renewing our commitment to each other and adding a small stone to a cairn we'd built beside the path. The garden staff had never said anything, probably assuming we were just another couple with a sentimental tradition. Could the code be related to that place somehow? Elena had certainly considered it where we promised forever, maybe even more so than our actual wedding venue, since the garden tradition had been entirely our own creation. But how would that translate into numbers? I needed to clear my head. The rain had stopped, and despite the late hour, I found myself grabbing my jacket and keys. Sometimes the best way to solve a puzzle was to step away from it. The drive to the Japanese garden took 20 minutes through quiet Portland streets. The garden itself was closed at this hour, but I parked near the entrance and walked the perimeter, trying to think like Elena. Standing there in the cool night air, surrounded by the scents of pine and damp earth, I felt her presence more strongly than I had since the funeral. Elena had loved this place, the way it encouraged quiet contemplation, the careful balance of elements, the sense of timelessness it provided in our busy world. And then, like a whisper in the darkness, the solution came to me. The garden had been designed with 8 distinct areas, each representing a different aspect of Japanese aesthetics and philosophy. Elena had memorized them all during our many visits, delighting in sharing the significance of each space. She'd even bought a guidebook and would quiz me playfully as we walked. What if the numbers corresponded to those 8 areas, in the order we always visited them? I couldn't remember the exact order off the top of my head, but I knew Elena would have chosen something that reflected our personal journey through the garden, our tradition, our path, our way of experiencing that sacred space together. Racing back home, I went straight to Elena's bookshelf and found the Japanese Garden Guidebook, its pages marked with her neat annotations and small heart symbols next to her favorite spots. As I flipped through the pages, looking for any connection to the number sequence, a piece of paper fluttered out. Another note in Elena's handwriting, this one dated just 2 months before her death. "My dearest Marcus," it read, "if you're reading this, it means you've started solving my little puzzle. I'm so proud of you for getting this far. The numbers aren't what you think they are. They're not dates or codes or coordinates. They're promises. 8 promises I want you to remember. 8 reasons to keep living. 8 ways to honor what we built together. The safe contains my final letter to you, but only open it when you're ready to hear what I need to tell you. All my love, always and forever, Elena." My hands shook as I processed her words. Elena had known. Somehow she'd known that she might not be here to guide me through my grief. She'd prepared this treasure hunt not just as a puzzle, but as a path forward. The 8 numbers weren't a combination at all. They were a sequence of steps, a journey she wanted me to take before I was ready for whatever waited in the safe. But what did each number represent? And how was I supposed to figure out 8 different promises or tasks without more clues? As if reading my mind, Elena had provided one more hint at the bottom of the note. "Start where we started, and let your heart remember the rest." Our first date, coffee at Stumptown on Division Street. I glanced at the clock, 2:47 a.m. The coffee shop wouldn't be open for hours, but something told me this wasn't about timing. It was about retracing our steps, reconnecting with the memories that had built our relationship from the ground up. Tomorrow, I would begin Elena's final gift to me, a journey through our love story, guided by her wisdom and her unshakable faith in my ability to find my way back to hope As I finally settled into bed, still clutching the notes, I realized that for the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. Elena had found a way to guide me home, even from beyond the grave. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Elena's funeral. The October sun streamed through our bedroom curtains, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits in the golden light. For the first time in months, the sight didn't make me sad. Instead, it reminded me of how Elena used to say that dust particles were just proof that our home was alive and lived in. I made coffee, Elena's favorite blend from Stumptown, and sat at our kitchen table with both notes spread in front of me. The sequence 1409 26 33 1805 0120 stared back at me, each number now feeling less like a cryptic code and more like breadcrumbs leading me somewhere important. Elena's second note had said to start where we started, which meant Stumptown Coffee on Division Street. But first, I needed to understand the significance of the number 14. Was it telling me to do something 14 times? Visit 14 places? Wait 14 days? Elena had always been direct in her communication. She wouldn't have made this needlessly complicated. As I sipped my coffee, I studied our wedding photo more carefully, looking for clues I might have missed. Elena's radiant smile, the way her hand rested on my chest, the cherry blossoms framing us perfectly. It was exactly as I remembered. But now I noticed small details that had escaped me before. The way she was holding a small piece of paper partially hidden behind her bouquet, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. My heart racing, I grabbed a magnifying glass from Elena's craft supplies and examined the photo more closely. There, barely visible in the image, were tiny numbers written on that piece of paper in her neat handwriting. 14. Elena had been planning this treasure hunt since our wedding day. 8 years ago, she'd already been thinking about how to guide me through life without her. The realization hit me like a physical blow, not just the grief of her foresight, but the overwhelming love that had motivated such careful preparation. I drove to Stumptown in a daze, parking in the same spot where I'd nervously adjusted my collar before our first date. The coffee shop looked exactly the same. Exposed brick walls, the aroma of fresh roasted beans, mismatched furniture that somehow created the perfect atmosphere for intimate conversations. Behind the counter, I recognized Jake, the barista who'd been working here since before Elena and I had started dating. He'd witnessed the evolution of our relationship through countless coffee dates, had learned our orders by heart, and had even given Elena advice about where to find the best anniversary gifts. Marcus. Jake's face lit up with genuine warmth, though I could see the sympathy in his eyes. Man, it's good to see you. How are you holding up? I'm getting by, I said, which felt more honest than the automatic fine I'd been giving most people. Actually, Jake, I was hoping you could help me with something. Did Elena ever leave anything here for me? Maybe something with my name on it? Jake's expression shifted to one of understanding recognition. Oh, wow, I'd almost forgotten. Yeah, she did. It was months ago, maybe back in the spring. She came in one afternoon when you weren't with her and asked me to keep an envelope safe. Said it was for a special occasion and that you'd know when to ask for it. My pulse quickened. Could I get that now? Of course, man. Let me grab it from the office. Jake disappeared into the back room, leaving me standing there with my heart hammering against my ribs. Other customers moved around me, ordering their morning caffeine fixes, completely unaware that I was about to receive what felt like a message from beyond. When Jake returned, he handed me a cream-colored envelope with, "For Marcus, promise number 1, written in Elena's distinctive purple ink. The envelope was sealed with a small heart sticker, the kind she used to put on lunch notes she'd leave in my work bag. She made me promise not to ask questions, Jake said quietly. But she seemed really at peace when she left this, like she was taking care of something important. I thanked Jake and ordered Elena's usual, a lavender latte with oat milk, before finding a quiet corner table. The same table where we'd sat on our first date, actually, though I wasn't sure if that was coincidence or if Elena had somehow orchestrated even that detail. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. My beloved Marcus, the letter began. If you're reading this at Stumptown, it means you've taken the first step on a journey I've designed just for you. This place holds so much magic for us. It's where I first realized I was falling in love with you, where we dreamed about our future, where you nervously asked if I wanted to make our coffee dates a regular thing. Promise number 1 is this. Remember that love begins with the smallest moments. That first conversation we had here lasted 4 hours because neither of us wanted it to end. You were so animated talking about your architecture projects, and I was fascinated by how your eyes lit up when you described designing spaces that would become people's homes. You made me see the poetry in blueprints and the intimacy of well-planned rooms. Your task today is simple. Spend 1 hour here just like we did on our first date. Don't check your phone. Don't rush through your coffee. Just sit and remember what it felt like to discover someone who saw the world the way you did. Remember that the capacity for that kind of connection still exists within you. When you're ready, the next number is 09. Think about where we went after our first date ended, not that night, but 9 days later, when you finally worked up the courage to ask me out again. All my love, Elena P.S. Jake has instructions to give you a lavender latte on the house today. I prepaid for it months ago because I wanted you to taste the sweetness of remembering. I looked up to see Jake approaching with a steaming mug, his expression kind but curious. She really thought of everything, didn't she? He said, setting the latte down gently. Yeah, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. She really did. I spent the next hour exactly as Elena had instructed, letting my mind wander back to that first magical afternoon. I remembered how nervous I'd been, how Elena had put me at ease with her quick wit and genuine interest in my work. I remembered the way she'd laughed, really laughed, not just politely, at my terrible jokes about architectural puns. I remembered walking her to her car afterward and the electric moment when she'd stood on her tiptoes to kiss my cheek goodbye. Most importantly, I remembered what it had felt like to be someone capable of inspiring that kind of affection in another person. For months, I'd felt like grief had hollowed me out, leaving nothing but sadness and empty routines. But sitting in that coffee shop, surrounded by the echoes of our beginning, I could almost feel those dormant parts of myself stirring back to life. The number 09 led me to Powell's Books, where we'd gone on our second date. Elena had been amazed that I'd remembered her mentioning a love for mystery novels, and we'd spent hours wandering the maze-like shelves, each of us pulling books to recommend to the other. She'd bought me a collection of essays about sustainable architecture, and I'd bought her a first edition Agatha Christie novel that had made her eyes sparkle with delight. The bookstore employee at the information desk, a woman with silver hair and paint-stained fingers, smiled when I explained what I was looking for. "Oh yes, Elena," she said immediately. "Such a lovely woman. She came in several times over the past year, always very specific about what she needed. Let me get that envelope for you." Promise number 2 was waiting for me in the mystery section, taped inside the cover of And Then There Were None, the same Christie novel I'd bought Elena on our second date. "Dearest Marcus," this letter read, "if you're holding this book, it means you've remembered the joy of discovery. Powell's always felt like a treasure hunt to both of us. So many stories waiting to be found, so many worlds to explore together. Promise number 2 is about curiosity. Never stop learning and growing. One of the things I loved most about you was your willingness to explore new ideas, to listen to different perspectives, to admit when you didn't know something. During our 8 years together, you introduced me to the beauty of architectural design, while I opened your world to literature and art. We made each other more complete. Your task today is to choose a book you've never read before, something completely outside your usual interests. Buy it and commit to reading it over the next few weeks. Let it remind you that there are still discoveries waiting for you, still ways to grow and change and surprise yourself. The next number is 26. Think about the 26th of something that changed everything for us. Elena, I wandered through Powell's for another hour, eventually settling on a collection of poetry by a Mexican-American writer Elena had mentioned once, but I'd never explored. Poetry had always felt foreign to me, but Elena had loved the way poems could capture enormous emotions in just a few carefully chosen words. As I stood in line to pay, I found myself thinking about the number 26. The 26th of what? Our wedding had been on the 26th of September, but Elena had already referenced that in her first note. What else had happened on a 26th that had been significant to our relationship? Then it clicked. February 26th, the day we'd moved in together. Elena had been so excited about combining our lives, our belongings, our daily routines. She'd made moving day feel like a celebration rather than a chore, ordering pizza for the friends who helped us, playing our favorite songs while we unpacked boxes, and ceremoniously hanging our first joint purchase, a piece of art from a local artist, above the fireplace. That evening, exhausted but happy, we'd sat on our living room floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and made plans for how we wanted to arrange our shared space. Elena had been adamant that it should feel like ours, not like her stuff had simply moved into my place or vice versa. Every decision, from where to put the couch to how to organize the kitchen, had been a collaboration. Our first shared home had been a small apartment near Hawthorne, nothing fancy but perfect for two people learning how to build a life together. We'd lived there for 2 years before buying our current house, but that little apartment held some of our most precious memories. I drove to Hawthorne Boulevard, parking outside the familiar building. The current tenants had painted the front door a cheerful yellow. It had been forest green when we'd lived there, but otherwise the building looked exactly the same. I sat in my car for a few minutes, working up the courage to approach the door. What if the current residents thought I was crazy? How do you explain that your deceased wife has sent you on a scavenger hunt that includes your old apartment? Before I could lose my nerve, I walked up to the door and knocked. A young woman about Elena's age answered, holding a toddler on her hip. "Hi," I said, feeling awkward but determined. "I know this is going to sound strange, but I used to live in this apartment a few years ago. My wife passed away recently, and she left me some kind of, a treasure hunt. I think she might have left something here for me to find." The woman's expression softened immediately. "Oh my goodness, you must be Marcus. Are you Elena's husband? She came by about 6 months ago and asked if she could leave something in the apartment. She was so sweet. She explained about the treasure hunt and made me promise to keep it safe for you." My knees nearly buckled with relief. "Yes, that's me." She really came here?" "She did. Come in, come in. I'm Sarah, by the way. Elena told me all about you and how much this place meant to both of you. She said living here had taught you both how to compromise and create something beautiful together." Sarah led me into the apartment, and I was amazed by how different yet familiar it felt. The layout was exactly the same, but Sarah and her family had made it completely their own. Where Elena and I had hung string lights and movie posters, Sarah had created a gallery wall of family photos. Our old reading nook by the window now held children's toys and picture books. "She left this for you," Sarah said, handing me an envelope from a drawer in the kitchen. "She also asked me to tell you that the apartment is happy. She said you'd understand what that meant." I did understand. Elena and I had always joked that our little apartment had a personality of its own, that it seemed to respond to our moods, feeling cozy when we were content and cramped when we were stressed. "The apartment is happy" had been our code for saying that we were in a good place, that our relationship was thriving within these walls. Promise After 3 was written on stationery decorated with tiny house illustrations. Elena had bought it from a local artist during one of our weekend market wanderings. "My darling Marcus," it read, "standing in our first shared home, I hope you can feel the love that still lives in these walls. This apartment was where we learned to navigate daily life together. Who would cook, who would clean, how to share space, how to support each other through stress and celebrate small victories. Promise number 3 is about partnership, Remember that love is a daily choice, not just a feeling. Every morning in this apartment, we chose each other again. When you left dirty dishes in the sink and I got frustrated, we chose to communicate rather than let resentment build. When I was stressed about graduate school and became snappy, you chose patience and compassion. When money was tight and we had to choose between dinner out or a movie, we chose to make popcorn and watch old films at home, turning financial constraints into opportunities for creativity. Your task today is to choose someone in your life, a friend, family member, colleague, and make a deliberate effort to strengthen that relationship. Call them, meet for coffee, write a letter. Show up in the way that Elena and I learned to show up for each other in this little apartment. The next number is 33. Think about what we celebrated 33 times together. All my love, Elena. I thanked Sarah profusely, and she insisted I stay for a cup of tea. As we chatted about the neighborhood and how it had changed over the years, I found myself thinking about Elena's instruction to strengthen a relationship. The answer came to me immediately: my brother David. David and I had been close growing up, but adult life had created distance between us. He lived in Seattle with his wife and 2 kids, and we'd fallen into the pattern of only talking on holidays and birthdays. After Elena's death, David had called several times, but I'd been too wrapped up in my own grief to really connect with him. Elena had always encouraged me to maintain my relationship with David. She'd loved having him and his family visit, had remembered his kids' birthdays when I forgot, had been the one to suggest we visit them for Christmas last year. She'd understood the importance of family bonds in a way that my grief-focused mind had lost sight of. That evening, I called David. Our conversation lasted 2 hours, the longest we'd talked in years. I told him about Elena's treasure hunt, about how she was helping me find my way back to living. David cried when I shared some of the details, and he confessed that he'd been worried about me, but hadn't known how to help. She was something special, David said toward the end of our call. I always admired how she could bring out the best in people. Remember that Christmas when she got Mom and Dad to actually talk to each other instead of just making polite conversation? She had this gift for making people feel seen. As we said goodbye, David and I made plans for me to visit Seattle the following month. It felt like the first concrete step I'd taken toward building a future that included joy and connection. The number 33 puzzled me for days. What had Elena and I celebrated 33 times together? It wasn't birthdays. We'd only had 16 of those combined during our relationship. It wasn't anniversaries, holidays, or any other obvious milestone. Then, while sorting through Elena's desk drawers, I found her collection of ticket stubs. Elena had kept every movie ticket from our relationship stored in a small wooden box with the date and a brief note about each film written on the back of each stub. I counted them, 33 movie tickets. From our third date to see a romantic comedy that had made us both laugh until our sides hurt, to the superhero movie we'd seen just weeks before her death. Elena had turned our shared love of cinema into its own kind of tradition. The 33rd ticket was from The Princess Bride, which we'd watched at a revival screening downtown just a month before Elena passed away. On the back, she'd written, "As you wish, always and forever." And the theater was still showing revival screenings on Thursday nights. When I called, the manager, a film enthusiast named Robert who remembered Elena and me as regulars, confirmed that she'd left something for me. "She was very specific," Robert said. "She asked me to give this to you only if you came asking for it during a Princess Bride screening. She said you'd understand the significance." Arson, that Thursday night, I sat in the same seats Elena and I had occupied for our final movie date together. The theater was nearly empty. Just a handful of other film lovers scattered throughout the vintage auditorium. As Wesley and Buttercup's story unfolded on the big screen, I clutched Promise Number 4 in my hands. "My dearest Marcus," Elena had written, "if you're reading this while watching our favorite movie, it means you've remembered that love stories don't end just because one person is no longer physically present. Wesley and Buttercup faced death, separation, and seemingly impossible obstacles, but their love endured because it was built on something deeper than circumstances. Promise No. 4 is about persistence. True love finds a way to continue, even when everything seems lost. Our love story didn't end when my heart stopped beating. It lives on in every choice you make that honors what we built together. Every moment you choose hope over despair. Every time you open your heart to connection with others. Your task today is to forgive yourself for surviving when I couldn't. I need you to understand that living, really living, not just existing, is the greatest tribute you can give to our love. I don't want you to carry guilt about moving forward, finding joy, or even loving again someday. The next number is 18. Think about the 18th something that we shared regularly. All my love, always, Elena. The movie's famous line echoed through the theater. Death cannot stop true love. All it can do is delay it for a while. For the first time since Elena's funeral, I felt the truth of those words in my bones rather than just my head. The number 18 led me on the most challenging part of Elena's treasure hunt yet. It took me 3 days of searching through our shared memories before I realized what Elena meant. The 18th of every month had been our adventure day, a tradition we'd started during our 2nd year of marriage when we'd committed to exploring a new place in Portland together at least once a month. Sometimes our adventures were grand, hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, visiting wineries in the Willamette Valley, or taking weekend trips to the Oregon coast. Other times, they were simple, trying a new restaurant, exploring a different neighborhood, or visiting a local museum we'd never been to before. But the 18th of every month was sacred to us, reserved for discovery and shared experiences. Elena had documented every single adventure in a leather journal she kept on her nightstand. Flipping through its pages now, I could trace the evolution of our relationship through these monthly expeditions. Early entries were filled with nervous excitement and the thrill of getting to know each other. Later ones showed the comfortable intimacy of a couple who had learned to see the world through each other's eyes. The final entry was dated September 18th, just 3 weeks before Elena's death. We'd visited the Portland Art Museum's new exhibition on Pacific Northwest landscapes. Elena had spent a long time standing in front of a painting of Mount Hood, and I remembered asking her what she was thinking about. I was thinking about how some things are so beautiful, they take your breath away, she'd said, and how lucky we are to live somewhere that reminds us every day that the world is full of wonder. At the time, I'd thought it was just Elena being her usual appreciative self. Now, reading her journal entry about that day, I realized she might have already been feeling the irregular heartbeats that would claim her life just weeks later. Marcus seemed tired today, she'd written, but he still indulged my need to read every single placard and spend 20 minutes analyzing the brushwork on that one painting of the waterfall. This is what love looks like, showing up for someone else's joy even when you'd rather be home watching football. I hope he knows how much these adventures mean to me. I hope he keeps exploring after I'm gone. The weight of her words hit me like a physical blow. Elena had known. Maybe not consciously, but some part of her had been preparing for goodbye even during what I'd thought were our most ordinary moments together. I found the envelope for promise number 5, tucked between the journal's final pages, along with a small map of Portland marked with 18 different locations, every place we'd adventured together on our monthly tradition. My adventurous Marcus, the letter began. If you're reading this with my adventure journal in your hands, it means you've remembered that love is an active verb, something we do rather than something we simply feel. Our monthly adventures weren't just about seeing new places. They were about choosing to remain curious about the world and about each other. Promise number 5 is about exploration. Keep discovering new things, even when you're doing it alone. Some of my happiest memories are of watching your face when you encountered something beautiful or interesting for the first time. The way you'd stop walking to really look at a stunning view, or how you'd ask thoughtful questions when we visited historical sites, or your genuine excitement when we'd stumble upon something unexpected. Your task today is to plan your own adventure. Choose somewhere in Portland you've never been, or somewhere we never went together. Go alone, but take me with you in spirit. Look at everything the way you used to look at new places with me, with wonder, with curiosity, with an open heart, ready to be surprised. The next number is 05. Think about something that happened every fifth day that brought us closer together. All my love and all my faith in your continued journey, Elena. I spent that entire afternoon planning my solo adventure, finally settling on the Portland Japanese Garden's sister location, the Lansu Chinese Garden in Chinatown. Elena and I had always meant to visit, but somehow never made it there, despite living in Portland for years. The next morning, I drove downtown with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This would be my first deliberate adventure since Elena's death, my first attempt to experience wonder on my own. The garden was tucked away behind traditional walls, a hidden oasis in the heart of the city. As I walked through the carefully designed landscapes, past the authentic Ming Dynasty architecture and around the tranquil lake, I found myself doing exactly what Elena had described, stopping to really look, asking questions of the volunteers, letting myself be surprised by the beauty and thoughtfulness of every detail. At one point, standing beside a small waterfall that created perfect ripples across the lake's surface, I pulled out my phone to text Elena about what I was seeing. The instinct was so automatic that I had typed half the message before remembering that she would never read it. But instead of deleting the text, I sent it anyway, to Elena's old number, which I still couldn't bring myself to disconnect. The sound of this waterfall would have made you stop and listen for 10 minutes, I wrote. You would have said something about how water finds its own rhythm, just like people do. I'm learning to find mine again. The number 05 puzzled me until I remembered our Friday night tradition. Every week, without fail, we declared Friday evenings our no plans time. No work obligations, no social commitments, no agenda beyond being together. Sometimes we'd cook elaborate dinners. Other times we'd order takeout. We might watch movies, play board games, work on a puzzle, or just talk for hours. Elena had fiercely protected our Friday nights, turning down invitations and work requests to preserve that weekly space for us to reconnect. Marriage requires maintenance, she used to say, just like a house or a car. Friday nights are our scheduled maintenance time. Our regular Friday night spot for takeout had been a small Thai restaurant called Pok Pok Noi. The owner, Mrs. Chen, had gotten to know us over the years, always greeting us warmly and sometimes sending extra spring rolls to our table for the lovely couple. When I walked into the restaurant that Friday evening, Mrs. Chen's face lit up with recognition tinged by sympathy. "Marcus, we have missed you and Elena. How are you doing?" Her English was accented but perfectly clear, and her concern was genuine. "I'm finding my way," I said. "Actually, I was wondering if Elena might have left something here for me. She's been leaving me messages in places that were special to us." Mrs. Chen's expression shifted to one of understanding. "Ah, yes. Elena came here several months ago. She said someday you would come looking for something from her. Wait here." She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a small wrapped package tied with red ribbon. She said to make sure you order her favorite meal first, then open this. Elena's favorite had been pad thai with extra lime and a side of mango sticky rice. As I waited for the food, I held the package in my hands, feeling the familiar flutter of anticipation that had become part of this journey. Promise number 6 was written on rice paper that Elena had somehow made herself, decorated with small drawings of takeout containers and fortune cookies. "My Friday night companion," she'd written. "If you're reading this while eating pad thai at Pok Pok Noi, it means you've remembered that love lives in the ordinary moments as much as the extraordinary ones. Our Friday nights weren't glamorous or Instagram-worthy, but they were ours. They were the weekly pause that reminded us why we chose each other again and again. Promise number 6 is about rhythm. Create new routines that honor your need for peace and connection. You might not want Friday nights to be ours anymore, and that's okay. But find some rhythm in your week that feels sacred, some time that you protect and preserve for whatever brings you comfort and joy. Your task today is to commit to one small weekly ritual that's just for you. Maybe it's Saturday morning coffee at a particular cafe. Maybe it's Sunday evening phone calls with David. Maybe it's something completely new. The point is to create structure that supports your healing and growth. The next number is 01. Think about the very first thing we did together that made you think we might have a future. All my love, Elena. As I ate Elena's favorite meal in our favorite Friday night spot, I thought about what my new weekly ritual might be. The idea that came to me surprised me. Saturday morning visits to Elena's grave. Not to wallow in sadness, but to sit peacefully and tell her about my week, about the progress I was making, about the moments of beauty I was learning to notice again. The number 01 brought me full circle in an unexpected way. The very first thing Elena and I had done together that made me think we might have a real future was so simple I'd almost forgotten it. She'd helped me pick out a birthday present for my nephew. It was after our 4th or 5th date, and I'd mentioned in passing that I was terrible at buying gifts for kids. Elena had immediately offered to help, and we'd spent an entire afternoon at a toy store with her patiently explaining what might appeal to a 7-year-old boy while I watched her interact with other children in the store. I'd fallen in love with her that day, not just with her kindness to me, but with her natural warmth toward people she didn't even know. She'd helped a confused grandmother find the perfect doll for her granddaughter, had untangled a complicated toy for a frustrated father, had even helped the cashier figure out how to apply a coupon correctly. That afternoon, watching Elena move through the world with such genuine care for others, I thought, I want to build a life with someone who makes the world a little brighter just by being in it. The toy store was still there, now run by the original owner's daughter. When I explained what I was looking for, she smiled knowingly. Oh yes, Elena. She came in about 8 months ago and left a package for Marcus. She said you'd probably have forgotten about this place, but that it was important. She was so sweet. She spent 20 minutes helping another customer find the perfect gift while she waited for me to get everything ready for you. Even in her final months, Elena had been unable to resist helping others. The realization made me smile and cry at the same time. Promise number 7 was hidden inside a children's book about a bear learning to ride a bicycle, the same book we'd bought for my nephew all those years ago. My thoughtful Marcus, Elena had written, standing in this toy store. I hope you remember the moment when you first saw me as someone you wanted to build a future with. I remember that day too, not because of the presents we bought, but because I realized you were watching me, really watching, trying to understand what kind of person I was when I thought no one was paying attention. Promise number 7 is about witness. Keep watching the world with the same attention you brought to watching me. One of your greatest gifts is your ability to really see people, their struggles, their joys, their small acts of kindness that most people miss. Don't let grief make you stop noticing the humanity around you. Your task today is to be deliberately present with someone else's story. Strike up a conversation with a stranger, really listen to a friend who's going through something difficult, or simply pay attention to the small dramas and victories happening around you every day. The final number is 20. Think about what 2020 has taught you about what really matters and what you want to carry forward into the rest of your life. All my love and all my confidence in who you're becoming, Elena. I spent that evening at a neighborhood coffee shop, following Elena's instruction to be present with someone else's story. I ended up in a 2-hour conversation with an elderly man named Frank, who was celebrating his 50th wedding anniversary alone because his wife was in memory care with Alzheimer's. Frank told me about their love story, about the challenges of watching someone you love disappear piece by piece, about the way he still visited her every day, even though she no longer recognized him. Love isn't just about the good times, he said. It's about showing up for all of it, even the parts that break your heart. As I drove home that night, I realized that Elena's treasure hunt had been doing exactly what Frank described, teaching me how to show up for all of it, even the parts that seemed impossible to bear. The final number 20 led me back to our house, to the safe I'd been trying to open for over a week. But now I understood that the combination wasn't the sequence of numbers Elena had given me. It was something else entirely. 2020 had taught me about the fragility of life, about the importance of connection, about how love could survive even death. But most importantly, it had taught me that Elena's greatest gift to me hadn't been her presence in my life. It had been her faith in my ability to build a meaningful life without her. Standing in front of the safe that night, I entered a different combination. 05-14-2020, the date Elena had died. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside the safe, nestled between our important documents and Elena's grandmother's jewelry, was a thick envelope marked, "For Marcus, when you're ready to begin again," and a small velvet box I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I opened the envelope, revealing not just a letter but a collection of items that told the story of our entire relationship. Ticket stubs from concerts, pressed flowers from our first Valentine's Day, a USB drive labeled "For the Future," and dozens of small notes Elena had written but never given me. The main letter was 12 pages long, written in Elena's careful handwriting on our anniversary stationery. As I began to read, I could hear her voice in every word. "My beloved Marcus," it began, "if you're reading this letter, it means you've completed my treasure hunt and you're ready to hear what I really wanted to tell you. First, I need you to know that I wrote this letter not because I knew I was going to die, but because I knew I was going to live, really live, fully and completely, in every moment we had together. This letter isn't about goodbye. It's about the love that doesn't end. When I think about our 8 years together, I don't think about the big moments, our wedding, our anniversary trips, the day we bought this house. I think about Tuesday mornings when you'd bring me coffee in bed, even though you were running late for work. I think about the way you'd automatically reach for my hand when we walked anywhere together. I think about how you'd listen, really listen, when I talked about my day, even when nothing particularly interesting had happened. Marcus, you have a gift for making ordinary life feel sacred. You never made me feel like I had to be more interesting, more accomplished, or more anything to deserve your love. You loved me exactly as I was, in all my messy, imperfect humanity. That kind of love is rare, and I need you to know that it changed me fundamentally as a person. But now, I need to tell you something difficult. I'm not writing this letter to ask you to stay frozen in our love story. I'm writing it to set you free from it. I know you, my darling. I know that your grief will try to convince you that moving forward means betraying what we had. I know you'll feel guilty about moments of happiness, about new connections, about the possibility of loving someone else someday. I know this because I know how deeply and completely you love, and I know that depth makes it harder to imagine loving again. But here's what I need you to understand. Our love story was complete. Not because it ended, but because it was whole and real and transformative while it existed. Nothing you do going forward can diminish what we built together. Nothing you do going forward can betray what we shared. I want you to fall in love again, Marcus. I want you to find someone who makes you laugh the way I did, who challenges you to grow, who creates new adventures with you. I want you to get married again if that feels right. I want you to have children if that's what your heart desires. I want you to build a life so full and rich and meaningful that when people ask about your first wife, you'll smile and say, "Elena taught me how to love completely. She's the reason I know how to be happy." The USB drive contains videos I made for you, messages for your future birthday, your next promotion, your eventual wedding day, the birth of your children. I made them because I wanted to be part of your celebrations, not your grief. I wanted to cheer you on as you build the beautiful life I know you're capable of creating. The small notes are things I wrote to you over the years, but never gave you. Thank you notes for small kindnesses, love letters on ordinary days, thoughts about what I admired about you during difficult moments. I saved them because I wanted you to have them when you needed reminding of who you are when you're not defined by loss. Marcus, for 8 years, I got to wake up every morning knowing I was loved by the most fundamentally good person I'd ever met. You made me believe in the possibility of unconditional love, in the beauty of small daily choices, in the profound intimacy of really seeing another person and choosing them every day. Now it's time for you to believe in those things for yourself. It's time for you to see yourself the way I saw you, as someone capable of creating deep connection, worthy of profound love, destined for a life filled with purpose and joy. The treasure hunt was never about the destination, my love. It was about remembering who you are when you're not drowning in grief. It was about reconnecting with the parts of yourself that exist independently of your role as my husband. It was about proving to yourself that you can still feel wonder, still make connections, still choose hope over despair. I need you to make me one final promise. Promise me you'll stop carrying the weight of my death and start carrying the gift of my love. They're different things. One will crush you, the other will lift you up. Promise me you'll remember that loving me completely doesn't require you to stop living completely. Promise me you'll trust that what we had was so real, so solid, so transformative, that it can survive your healing, your growth, your eventual happiness with someone else. Promise me you'll see my death not as the end of love, but as proof of how much love is possible in a human life. I love you, Marcus. I love you with a love that doesn't end when breathing stops. I love you with a love that wants your highest good, even when your highest good means moving beyond your grief for me. Live beautifully, love fearlessly. Make choices that honor both who you were with me and who you're becoming without me. All my love for all time, Elena P.S. Open the velvet box when you're ready to say goodbye to this phase of your life and hello to whatever comes next. I sat on our bedroom floor, surrounded by Elena's final gifts, and cried harder than I had since the day she died. But these weren't tears of despair. They were tears of release, of gratitude, of a grief that was finally ready to transform into something else. The small notes Elena had saved were revelations of a love I'd never fully grasped while she was alive. "Thank you for changing the light bulb in the bathroom without being asked," one said. "It's not about the light bulb. It's about the way you notice what needs attention and take care of it quietly." Another read, "Watching you comfort David when he was going through his divorce reminded me why I fell in love with you. Your kindness isn't performance. It's just who you are." The USB drive contained dozens of video messages, each one labeled with a different future milestone. For Marcus on his 40th birthday, for Marcus when he gets promoted to partner, for Marcus on his wedding day, for Marcus when his first child is born, for Marcus on Father's Day. I wasn't ready to watch them all yet, but I clicked on one labeled, "For Marcus when he's ready to date again." Elena's face filled my laptop screen, radiant and alive in a way that made my breath catch. She was sitting in our garden, late afternoon sunlight catching the highlights in her hair. "Hi, my love," she said, smiling directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means you're thinking about opening your heart to someone new. I'm so proud of you for getting to this point. I know how hard it must have been to even consider it. I want you to know that I hope she's wonderful. I hope she makes you laugh until your sides hurt. I hope she challenges you and supports you and sees all the beautiful things about you that I saw. I hope you create new traditions together, have new adventures, build new dreams. I also hope you tell her about me. Not because you're stuck in the past, but because I was part of the story that shaped you into the man she's falling in love with. I hope you share the good memories and maybe even some of the hard ones. I hope she understands that your capacity to love her completely is partly because you learned how to love completely with me. Most of all, I hope you don't carry any guilt about choosing happiness again. Love isn't a finite resource, Marcus. The love you gave me doesn't diminish the love you can give someone else. They're different loves for different chapters of your life, and both of them are real and worthy and beautiful. I love you. I'll always love you. And because I love you, I want your life to be filled with as much joy and connection as possible. Go forth and love fearlessly, my darling. Finally, with the evening light fading outside our bedroom windows, I opened the velvet box. Inside was a simple silver ring, modern and masculine, engraved with a single word, forward. It was Elena's final gift and her final instruction. A reminder that love doesn't end with death, but it also doesn't end with grief. Love continues in the choices we make to keep growing, keep connecting, keep opening our hearts to the possibility of joy. I slipped the ring onto my right hand. My left still carried my wedding band, and I wasn't ready to remove that yet. But Elena's ring felt like a promise I was finally ready to make to myself. The promise to honor what we'd had by building something beautiful with what remained. That night, I called David and told him I was ready for that visit to Seattle. I called Jake at Stumptown and told him I'd be back to working on my laptop there some mornings, returning to the living world of regular routines and casual connections. I called my boss and said I was ready to take on new projects, to re-engage with the work I'd always loved. And then, sitting in our living room with Elena's letter in my hands and her ring on my finger, I began to imagine what forward might look like. Not forgetting Elena, but carrying her love with me as I moved toward whatever came next. The treasure hunt was over, but the real journey was just beginning. Elena had spent her final months creating a map that would guide me from the depths of grief back to the possibility of joy. She'd hidden pieces of our love story throughout Portland, each one designed to remind me not just of what I'd lost, but of what I'd gained by loving her completely. Her final words weren't about goodbye, they were about beginning again, armed with the knowledge of how much love is possible in a human life and the unshakable faith that I was capable of creating it again. Outside, the first winter snow was beginning to fall, covering our neighborhood in pristine white. By spring, I thought, I might be ready to plant new flowers in Elena's garden. By summer, I might be ready to host David's family for a visit. By next year, I might be ready for adventures I couldn't even imagine yet. But tonight, I was ready for the simplest and most profound thing of all. I was ready to believe that my story wasn't over. It was just beginning a new chapter, one that Elena had given me the courage and permission to write. I fell asleep that night, holding Elena's letter, wearing her ring, surrounded by the evidence of a love so complete it had prepared its own ending. And for the first time in 8 months, I dreamed not of what I'd lost, but of what might still be possible. The code in our wedding photo had led me to more than just a safe. It had led me back to myself, back to hope, back to the understanding that the deepest love doesn't ask us to stop living when it ends. It asks us to live more fully because we've been blessed to experience it. Elena's final words weren't goodbye. They were permission to say hello to whatever beautiful, uncertain, hope-filled future was waiting for me to step into it.